Niels about forest in offline mode.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Niels. I'm a developer. I work as a contractor, and I will talk about an application I built 3 years ago using Ember Pouch and Couch2B. And Martin already gave a nice introduction about what those technologies are. Yeah, I gave the same presentation last year in Hamburg. It was a smaller group, but this is like a new audience, so I thought we could do it again. Yeah, so it was 2 years ago, and the University of Wageningen asked me if I could help them create an app to manage forest, and I was like, what? Okay, so forest needs to be managed. What is it about? What do you want? And it turned out that they have like managed areas with trees on it, forests, and it was managed in Excel files with all the formulas. The main logic was in Excel sheets. Again, Excel. And it was unmaintainable, also to share with each other and stuff like that. So they asked me, can you build something? Can you build an application to solve this problem? And they wanted an application that students could use to actually learn about how to manage a forest. So they could make decisions, a decision to chop a tree or to preserve a tree, and then the output would be like, what is the economical gain or ecological gain or decrease if you take certain actions. Yeah, so we started with exploring, like we went into the field and we were like, okay, what exactly, how does this work, how do you do this, what do we need to take into account? And it turns out every tree is labeled. It's actually quite organized. Oops. I'm going too fast. Every tree has a label. And also you can see here, the height is marked, so there's a fixed height where they mark the trees. And all that is put into an Excel file, an Excel sheet. Yeah. And then we went together with a group of people to see, okay, how are they actually, what is the idea, how would they use this, and so the contrast is very, low. Also the Wi-Fi is flaky, so we cannot rely on the internet. Stuff like that. So then we started with a design. I worked together with a designer and other person from Wageningen who knows about the domain logic. It looks like this basically. So they still use a CSV file or Excel, but this time it only contains like the minimum amount of data we need, like the positioning of the trees X and Y. What's the label of the tree, and then the main height, where you could see the black mark. This is then the app itself, where you can see an overview of all the trees. The color represents the species. You can take actions like you can chop it down or decide to preserve it. You can see the name of the area. Yeah, that's the area. And then yeah, we started the development of the app. Yeah, actually I was like, before I started working on this, I went to another Ember Meetup and I saw a presentation of Martin. I was very inspired by the Pouch2B and Ember itself and Couch2B and how it all synced, and I was like, for quite some time, I was like, I want to build something with this. And then they asked me to create an offline app basically. I was like, yes, I can finally do it. But I didn't know Ember, I didn't know how to use Pouch, not even Couch, so it was like, I did the development myself. So I figured out this structure to organize. I was familiar with Docker and Docker Compose. I created a small configuration which I could use for local and then also for production eventually, or any other staging or test environments. There's like, I used Nginx as the web server. There's one container or image which contains the static assets for the web app. There's a Node API for the file uploads, CSV and Excel. And there's Couch2B. Turns out that I didn't really need an Nginx, but I didn't know knew about that. Of course, there were some challenges when building this. the first one was the hardest one, getting to know Ember and Ember Pouch. I spent a lot of nights going through the docs, figuring out stuff, reading about add-ons, and getting to know the whole ecosystem. Because it's nice if you see a presentation, but if you have to build it yourself, it's like another step. Yeah, so Ember Pouch, which I mentioned before. But it's actually very intuitive Ember Pouch because there's a plugin for it which Martin maintains, and you don't actually need to worry about Pouch. You have a minimum amount of configuration. We show like a syncing indicator, and that's it. All the other stuff is like as you work with a normal Ember app. You work with the adapters, models, and that's it. It's really abstracted away from development. Some other places where I found a lot of documentation which really helped me a lot during the development. There's the Ember.js discussion board, Dockyard, articles about Ember, and Ember Weekly, and also the videos from Amsterdam Ember.js. The second challenge, offline is not an error scenario, so if the user goes offline, the app should not crash. You should actually help the user with feedback and show that the app still works, but hey, you are offline. One example is a syncing indicator. First one is, hey, you're connected, all is well. This one is you're connected and it's syncing at the moment, push or pull. And the other one is offline. And we use the JavaScript API from Pouch here to check what the last response was. The storage engine and the limits, this is like a PouchDB used IndexedDB, but there was a lot of issues on iOS, especially like back in the days, iOS 10 and 11, I guess. It was very buggy, it was slow, it was scrappy, and it would fall back to WebSQL, which is now deprecated or completely removed. It's removed from PouchDB. Luckily, most of the issues are solved now with iOS 12, so it's actually it works very well now. But back then it was quite slow. So here you can see some issues here, like Safari 7.1, iOS 8. They support NXDB, but its implementation has so many bugs that PouchDB ignores it, and they fell back to WebSQL. Chrome was 20% slower. Blah blah blah. Nowadays it's actually much better. I use this tool to check how much storage was available, because although it's only text for storing, every action the user executes, like chop a tree or preserve it, whatever, is extra data. And because I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, the storage grew quite quickly. But this tool helped me to get to know the limits of every browser and device. Had a lot of fun with that. Auto-compaction, I learned about this after. So on the client side, you don't actually need all the history of the documents. And this actually cleans it up. So you can preserve it in the database. We have a lot of storage there, it doesn't really matter. But on the client side, you want to keep it as small as possible. You don't need all the data there. You also don't want Ember data to load in all the records to have Ember models for every IndexedDB. So your Ember models would be one thing, and then you have Ember models would be a subset of what is in your IndexedDB, and IndexedDB would be a subset of what is in CouchDB. In a nutshell. AppCache, Service Worker, another party with browsers. I started with AppCache, but it's deprecated nowadays, and then I moved to Service Workers. There's a great add-on from Dockyard also to set up service workers. It only takes a couple of lines. But of course you also need to know what are service workers and how to use it. And this is still about application cache. Don't use it, it's deprecated now. And this is the new one from Dockyard. And I learned about offline web applications, like service workers, how they work, how you should treat them, by Jake Archibald. Very helpful article. Last challenge, performance. So there's a lot of calculations going on. Most of them are simple, but there's also quite expensive calculations. Like let's say you have the forest and then all the trees at the edge of the forest. The radius shouldn't be fully taken into account because they overlap with the boundaries. So you should like chop that off and then only go further with a partial circle actually. So those kind of calculations added up quite quickly because you have a relation between every tree inside a certain radius. Computed properties help a lot because they are lazy. They're lazy. What's the other? We have it also. They are. If you call them a second time, then.
Idempotent?
Sorry?
Idempotency?
Memoir.
Is that what it was?
Memoid. So, yeah. Memoid. Yes. Yeah. So if you call them again with the exact same parameters, of course they have to be pure functions, but they wouldn't do the calculation again. It's cached. So the computed properties are actually perfect for this use case. But you have to learn how to work with them because I was like returning promises in the beginning, a mess, but I learned the hard way. Anyone interested in the demo?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Did you bring your forest?
Everything is just.
Let's see. Oh,
So now you might want to mirror.
yeah. I'll this way.
This is way more fun.
Almost. It's like
So-
would be fun if it's like Minecraft.
I can show the code or the app. Let's start with the app. So we're connected now. This is the overview of exercises. We call them exercises. So students go into the field with their iPad. They can either start a new exercise or they can look at the previous exercise. Let's look at what we've done before. So we can take a look at the result of an exercise.
Could you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah. This? Yeah. You can see when the exercise was done. There's certain all sorts of results. There's a general section. This is the area of the forest. I won't be able to translate all these labels. It's very specific to trees. It's basically like how many trees were there before thinning. Before thinning, what is the harvest, and after thinning, what's the harvest, and the percentage that has been harvested.
That's fine.
It's quite specific. Yeah. So. More calculations. Not a number, nice. Yeah. So what we do is actually we take a look at the current situation of the forest, and then with the formulas applied, what will happen in 10 years with the forest if you have chopped tree X and Y and preserved X, the other trees. Then there's also graphs. How many species there are before and after thinning. Instructions, relevance. There's a map. So here you can see the forest itself on the top, and then the actions you have taken. This one was chopped. This one was also chopped. This is leaflet, by the way, which works really well. And then the latest edition was about the climate. Like they want to see what the impact is on the climate if you chop down a forest. Yeah, same stuff. Very domain specific. You can even compare it with another exercise. So one student can have his result, and then he can compare with another student and see who did best and why they did best. Like if you chop down small trees, it might not be not a good idea. Or we can also continue on the next exercise, and this is the same plot. And just dim this because of safety.
It's the execute always,
And we can say you want to preserve this because it's, for nature it's a very nice tree. You have to preserve this one. I really like the later. Save it. And then if you now look at the result, it will be a different outcome. Okay. Yeah, that's it.
May I ask one question? Because you were speaking about students are going in there and they do stuff there.
Yeah.
So they mark and they do everything in the app, and then you calculate what would happen.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so more students can compare what they did. So what is the base target? I did not get that really correct. The base target of the application is that find the best way how you culturize all these trees.
It's not.
And what will be the result then? So what will be the action?
Yeah.
Afterwards?
It's not exactly about like being the best or like being the
that's
best
what
manager. It's
sure.
more about
Sure.
if you take an action, what's the consequence?
Yeah.
If you chop down small trees, that's not a, like. If this tree is standing by itself, leave it alone. If there's like 4 trees standing with each other, chop down 3 of them so one can really grow. And those algorithms are inside the app, and that's what makes it interesting.
Okay, so will there be a suggestion to somebody?
No.
Then do it like this or do it like that, or is it just a scientific calculation?
There's still a teacher with them which who will say, or together they will go back to the classroom and then they will analyze the results.
Okay.
Why did you do this? And you can see the consequence of this.
I mean, it would have the power to suggest to the forest people, hey, do it like that, and don't do it like that.
Forest
No.
people.
I don't know
Exactly.
the translation. I have no idea.
Yeah, but to implement suggestions in code is quite risky, isn't it?
Yeah, no, yeah, for sure. I mean, that would be an extra step, just to compare everything and have the best results, so like machine learning and stuff like that.
Then
But that's not, but as I imagine, people are going to the woods and they say, okay, we have to cut all this.
I don't like that.
You know?
You're right, and we have the data, so we could do it. This is still where we
So
are.
it's just pure scientific stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
For them, it's mostly the algorithms which matter most, and actually, here we go again, download to Excel. And then they can again.
It's a learning, right? It's used for classroom.
Yes, yeah.
So the actual professional forest workers won't use. They might have their own.
They will not use it, so that was the question.
Yeah,
I
no.
mean, it would be cool when they use it. You know?
Yeah. We have the
They
data.
probably use Excel.
Yeah, they can't use because they don't have access.
Question?
2 questions actually. First, since we're talking about people who use this app, have you considered offering it to other schools or selling it to people, or is that even possible in your contract?
No, I built this for them, so they own the app.
Okay.
This is for like, they're also planning to use it in Belgium,
Okay.
but for now it's only in the Netherlands for Wageningen. But it's up to them.
And then my technical question, it looked like you're using CouchDB within Docker, is that correct? Your
Yes,
diagram suggested such.
It's a Docker container which is running.
Why did you choose that, and have you had any problems, or has it worked well, or what's been your experience with that?
To be very honest, I didn't really know what I was doing at that time.
Okay.
But at least I didn't have any like experience with Couch before, but I did know about Docker, and it was the easiest way for me to have like in production the exact same environment as I had in development.
Is it a single node Couch installation then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was still Couch 1 or something. Like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Does it answer the question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So they go with the iPad in the forest completely offline, I guess. And then they do all the work and then come back to the office and then it syncs.
Yeah.
That's
So,
it, yeah.
they download the data when they're online, and then they go to the forest, do their stuff, and then they sync again.
Because that's a real cool, I mean, apart from all the technical stuff in
Yeah, that's a cool feature.
Yeah,
from a
it's-
technical point of view, this is like the real
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah. yeah, it's always nice to see to-do apps, but then to also have like a scenario where you can like make
Yeah.
very useful scenario. It was a nice thing to work on.
We built a prototype that is like the same concept but different area. It is for avalanche barrier protection in Switzerland. So there's like every month an inspector goes around and sees is this barrier that holds all the snow still safe? Yes, no. And if not, they have to take photos. They have to be geo-coordinated. We have a very, very nice, precise satellite image set of Switzerland now. That's not public because we had to feed that all into there. And it doesn't use Ember, but we made it a web app. It runs on it ran on Android 2.1, which was old at the time when we were doing it. We could basically assign work packages in the field. Say, well, this thing is broken now. Construction crew must come out as soon as possible. But in the Alps, of course, no internet, and I hope we don't put LTE masts up there. So they come back into the office, and then everything gets sent back into the back office, and then work packages for the construction people get created, and it's a whole process workflow that works really well. But same story.
Did you use any framework in the front end, or was it all?
I forget.
Okay.
That may have been in the times. What was it called? Backbone.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was around that time.
Yeah. Okay. Because I found it really working very smoothly with Ember Pouch, and you only had to know about Ember, and then the other stuff would be taken care of for you.
All right.
Yeah.
So thank you, Niels.
Thank you.